Rolling along here on the second edition of the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining me. However you may be listening or watching this show, you can find the show wherever you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Subscribe, tell a friend. We're trying to expand this show, so do everything in your power. Believe me, I'll do my part if you do your part. So we'll work together as a team in that regard. Busy show again today. We will go over what happened in week one in regards to schools across not only the MSAC and Cardinal Conference, but also just some other scores locally as well. So we'll do that here coming up in a few shakes. Then, following our first break, we will be talking with Donnie Mays, the head football coach of the Hurricane Redskins. They are coming off a 63-0 victory over the Winfield Generals. So we'll talk with Coach Mays coming up in our second segment. And then I'll give you a story at the end because Donnie actually mentioned a good friend of mine, and I will give you the story behind him here coming up at the end of the show. So before we get into that interview with Coach Mays, let's dive into the week one recaps for this week. And before we do so, let's take a look at this quick stat. This was a very interesting stat from a lot of different reasons. It's still early in the season, I understand that, but it's still too early. Let's just say it like that. It's still too early, but the stat is Nitro was the only Kanawha County school to win Friday night. They defeated Poca 56-6 thanks to 8 touchdowns from Josh Moody connecting with all of his Nitro receivers. So Nitro was the only Kanawha County school. The other 7 Kanawha County schools lost by a combined 369-86. That is an average score of 52.7 to 12.3. And those stats are provided by Steve Edwards on Facebook. So go check that out as well. Let's dive into our week one recaps, and let's start with the game that we were going to be talking with coming up in our next segment with head coach Donnie Mays. Let's look at that Winfield Hurricane game, and Hurricane shuts out the Winfield Generals, winning by a final of 63-0. Hurricane has now won 14 straight games against Winfield. The Redskins' 63 points were the most points by either school in this historical rivalry. It's the first time Winfield's been shut out in this series. It's the first time Winfield's been shut out since 2020 against Point Pleasant. Hurricanes' JacQai Long recorded 223 total yards and 4 touchdowns, 2 rushing and 2 passing. Hurricanes' next game will be on the road against Capital, while Winfield will welcome Herbert Hoover to General Stadium on Friday for a rematch of last year's first-round matchup between the Huskies and the Generals. So great week 2 game on tap in Putnam County. Moving along to the other Thursday game involving a Kanawha County team, and that was George Washington. Cabell Midland wins by a final of 49-21 over the Patriots. Cabell Midland has now won 9 of its 11 home openers since 2000, including winning its last 2. The Knights moved to 11-3 all-time against George Washington. The Patriots have split its last 8 season opening road games. Cabell Midland will travel to Spring Valley this Friday, and George Washington will face Ashland, Kentucky at Steve Edwards Senior Field on Friday. Going along to the only Saturday game involving a Kanawha County school, that's Herbert Hoover. They travel to Boone County to take on the Scott Skyhawks. However, Herbert Hoover fell to the Skyhawks 50-19. Scott has now won back-to-back games against Herbert Hoover. However, the Huskies still lead the all-time series 14-6. Scott's 50 points is the most points in a season opener by a Skyhawk team since 1998. Scott defeated Tug Valley that year 56-12. Herbert Hoover snaps its 12-game road game winning streak, which dates back a few seasons, so that was a tremendous mark for Joey Fields' ball club. Scott will do battle with the Wayne Pioneers on Friday at Scott Field, and Herbert Hoover, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, they will travel to Winfield Friday evening. Going over to the game that I mentioned before we dove into these games, Nitro, a 50-point victor over Poca, winning by a final of 56-6. Nitro has now won consecutive games over the Dots. The Wildcats' 56 points was the third time a Nitro team posted 50 points or more against Poca in this historic series. Nitro moves to 48, 35, and 6 all-time against the Dots. Nitro quarterback and Buffalo transfer Josh Moody passed for 411 yards and 8 touchdowns against the Dots. Nitro will travel across the bridge and take on the St. Albans Red Dragons, and Poca will face Chapmanville on Friday. Moving along to Chapmanville and Sissonville, and Chapmanville was a 21-point victor over the Sissonville Indians, winning by a final of 28-7. Chapmanville has now won back-to-back games against Sissonville. However, the Indians still lead the series 10-7. Sissonville's 7 points were its lowest total against the Tigers since 2015, when the Indians scored 6 points and lost 30-6. Chapmanville has now won 4 of its last 5 road games, and after winning 5 straight season openers, Sissonville has dropped its last 2. Chapmanville will make the trip to Putnam County and take on the Polka Dots on Friday, and Sissonville makes the trip to Logan County for a date with the Logan Wildcats. Going over to Woodrow Wilson as they welcomed Riverside to Raleigh County, and Riverside fell by a final of 38-13. Woodrow Wilson has now won 4 of its last 5 games against Riverside, including 3 straight. The Flying Eagles' last 3 wins against the Warriors came when Woodrow Wilson scored 30 or more points. Woodrow Wilson now leads the series 11-8. Riverside has now lost 4 straight season openers. The last season opening win came in 2019 against Woodrow Wilson, 38-8. Woodrow Wilson will face Greenbrier East coming up on Friday, and Riverside will welcome Parkersburg to Kanawha County. Going along now to the game that I covered between Parkersburg South and Capital, and man, oh man, what a race this was. Parkersburg South wins by a final of 83-26. Let me say that again, 83-26. Those 83 points, that's not a basketball number. That is a legit football score. Parkersburg South has claimed 4 of the last 5 games against the Cougars, including 3 straight. However, the Cougars still lead the series 7-4. Parkersburg South's Gage Wright accounted for 5 touchdowns, including an 88-yard kickoff return for a touchdown on the opening kickoff. Capital has split its last 4 home games. The Cougars did score more points against the Patriots this year than they did last year. Capital was actually held scoreless against Parkersburg South a season ago, 59-0. Parkersburg South will head to Monongalia County to take on University on Friday, while Capital will welcome Hurricane to Laidley Field. Moving along, and Parkersburg, a 56-0 victor over the St. Albans Red Dragons. Parkersburg's 50 points is the 4th time since 2010 that the Big Reds have accounted for 50 or more points in the season opener. The Big Reds have won 14 straight against the Red Dragons. St. Albans' last win against Parkersburg came in 1997 by a final of 13-7. St. Albans has now lost 12 straight games. The Red Dragons' last win came on October 29, 2021 against Capital, 27-19. Parkersburg travels to Kanawha County for a date against Riverside, and St. Albans will take on county rival Nitro. Morgantown, they win by a final of 56-0 over the South Charleston Black Eagles. Morgantown has now outscored South Charleston 115-0 in the last 2 meetings against the Black Eagles. The Mohegans have won 3 of the last 5 meetings. South Charleston's last win, it came against Morgantown in 2021, winning by a final of 37-28. South Charleston has now dropped back-to-back season opening games after winning 3 straight. Morgantown will make the short drive down I-79 and play Bridgeport on Friday, while South Charleston will welcome the defending Class AAA state champion Huntington Highlanders to Eagle Stadium on Friday. And speaking of Huntington, they win by a final of 42-7 over the Spring Valley Timberwolves. Huntington has now defeated Spring Valley in 2 of the last 3 games. The series is now evened up at 13 apiece. Huntington's 42 points is only the 2nd time a Highlanders team has posted 40 or more points against Spring Valley. The last time came on September 3rd, 2004, when the Highlanders scored 49 points, and the Timberwolves have now lost 2 of its last 3 season openers. Huntington makes the trip to Kanawha County and faces South Charleston on Friday, while Spring Valley will welcome the Cabell Midland Knights into the Wolves' Den. So that'll do it for the first segment of the show. When we come back, we will hear from head coach Donnie Mays of the Hurricane Redskins. What does he think following last Thursday's 63-0 victory over Winfield? We'll figure that out next here on the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook.
Hi, this is JJ Roberts from Huntington, and when I'm back home, you will find me at my local Par-Mar store.
We had that thundering herd pride at your local Par-Mar stores. We are over 200 stores strong and growing. Download the Par-Mar app for even more savings and sign up for the Par-Mar Rewards Card. Whether it's food, gas, or groceries, we have you covered. We are Marshall, and we are Par-Mar stores.
If there's not a Par-Mar store near you now, there will be soon.
In an ever-changing world, one thing you can always count on is Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Hurricane. You know, Gene and Ryan built their business the old-fashioned way by making friends. There are no gimmicks or games at Walker, just honest, fair deals, and their method is so straightforward it may shock you. Friendly service and a huge selection of inventory with more arriving daily. When you're ready for your next vehicle, take the short 20-minute drive from Charleston or Huntington to Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, just off the Hurricane exit of I-64. Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, making friends one deal at a time.
Welcome back into the Monday edition of the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining me. I'm here with the head football coach of the Hurricane Redskins, head coach Donnie Mays. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. So let's kind of just talk about last Thursday's game against Winfield. 63-0 was the final score, the highest point total in that series since the series first began back in the 30s, for that matter. Just kind of walk me through. You've been able to digest the game a little bit over the last couple of days. What do you walk away impressed with that game?
Well, it's always hard to come out, firing out on all cylinders. I thought we did a pretty good job of that. Early on in the game, I kind of felt like we weren't playing to our best potential, but as the game, went on, we kind of took what we needed to do and run with it. I thought our kids were exceptional of getting to the football on defense, and I thought offensively, taking care of the football is always the big thing for me. So I thought we did a really good job there.
When you look at that game as well, on the other side, what do you walk away saying we need to get better at this leading into week 2?
So penalties. Anytime that you accumulate a lot of penalties, and there's always going to be those first game jitters for the kids. They're going to mess up. Then there's always going to be that first game like you're so amped up you just can't shut your mouth or whatever. But those are the things that we've got to clean up. But also just like just what we're trying to do within the offense and being precise and making sure that we know where we're going with the football. Just I need to clean that stuff up.
Obviously, that also goes along the line of a high emotion game as well. And obviously, you guys will have a ton of those this year against great competition. As a coach, how do you approach going into a game with a lot of emotions and a lot of bragging rights for that matter as well?
You just have to take every game by game, and really we're only guaranteed 10 of them. So you really need to lock in and focus on who your opponent is that week and never look ahead.
Year 2 for you with the Hurricane job. When you look at what you guys are building here in Putnam County, are you happy at the rate that it's going so far? And if so, what's been able for you all to be successful in 2 years?
I'm a visionary. I want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're trying to make it move forward and build it bigger than what it is currently. And we've got some plans in place to make this place bigger, but we have to have the major support areas to get it done. But I'm always about growth and making sure that this place is going to be better than the way that I found it. The same way we left South Charleston, we left it better than the way we found it. I mean, we had like 8 sets of uniforms, and our teams were playoff football teams every year. We changed that football program over there from a team that was not winning football games to a perennial power, under the direction of Coach Messenger, and then I got to take over in 13, and John had 2 state championships. We lost one, and of course everybody wants to talk about the COVID year and stuff like that, but I would put our team against anyone. I felt like we did everything we could to build that program to where it needs to be, and I want to do the same thing here. But I think I have a different vision here because there's a lot of community support, and the people really get behind the teams and over here with the baseball and the softballs and all the different sports. And I want to make that the same way for football. And I've talked to a lot of people, and we have some ideas and plans to make this place big.
When you look at this year's team, 1-0 in the season following a 63-0 win over Winfield last Thursday, but when you look at this team compared to last year's team, what are some differences between these two teams?
Well, we don't have kids like Heath Montgomery, Lucas Ripito, Mondrell Dean, Cam Phillips, Jacob Ellis, to name a few. But we've got kids that are stepping up to the plate and doing what they need to do to get the job done. So overall, I'm fairly pleased with where we are. I think that we've got things that we need to do to get better, which we did at this point in the year last year. But I don't take anything away from Winfield. That's a good football team, and I have a feeling they're going to be right there in the end, fighting for the double-A stuff. So we just gotta keep focusing on us. We lost some good players, but it's the next man up mentality, and I feel like our kids have really done a good job of gelling and playing football together and getting out there and doing what we're asking them to do to make sure that we're successful on Fridays.
Head coach Donnie Mays of the Hurricane Redskins is our guest here on the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook. And coach, you have that next guy up mentality. How encouraging is that whenever you do lose so many valuable pieces from one year and then you have that next guy up mentality? How encouraging is that for you as a coach leading into a new year?
Well, I mean, it's just what we do in the weight room. We're always trying to get stronger, things like that. We're trying to get faster. And when the kids come and work the way they did, I talked about this with Coach Lamar Martin, who runs our strength and conditioning program. I talked about this yesterday, actually. The kids that we have in our weight room, it's every day. We've been doing this since January, and they could not wait to get out there. And that's not a knock on anyone else's weight program. I just feel like ours is different. I feel like our guys are pushing themselves. And you do. It's a season itself. We had some minor injuries there, but the next guy steps up and tries to make himself better. So it was an awesome off season, but that mentality of the next man up carries over to the football field, if you know what I'm saying.
Capital Week 2, when you look at this team, put 26 points up on the board against a really good Parkersburg South team, definitely an improved team, but yet they are still young as well. What do you see for the Cougars this year?
Well, it's a young football team. They're very athletic. They're schematically they're the same. They've been for a while. And that little quarterback they have, Valdivia, he's an athlete, and he gave us some fits out here last year as a freshman. He's hard to bottle up, and you gotta really go get him and contain him to force him to stop. And then they've got a little freshman running back in David Robinson, and he's going to be a really good one. So their backfield's going to be good. I think that what we have to do is control the line of scrimmages and get the ball back from them, force a lot of turnovers.
You mentioned some players on Capital. Let's talk some players for your team.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys are great in almost every position that you guys have, but talk to me about the quarterback position with JacQai Long, a Marshall commit for you all, had a terrific first game against Winfield. What's impressed you about what Long's been able to do from fall camp to heading into week 2? It's
been quick. It's been quick for him. I think that he understands the offense really well. He grasps it. He picks up on little things. I'm trying to make it a lot easier for him. So he's done a really nice job. And what he did Thursday night, directing the offense out there was really good. And just to piggyback off that, other guys around him got better because of him.
I think the one thing that impresses me the most is the fact that, along with a great arm, he also can move at a high rate. And obviously, with today's game of football, you got to have a dual threat quarterback because defenses are definitely evolving in different ways. When you look at him being able to pass and run at such a high effective rate, how good is that for you guys offensively to have a dual threat quarterback of his caliber?
Well, I've been very fortunate in my coaching career to have some really good dual threats, and he would rank right up there with a lot of the guys I've had. But he makes it difficult because you can't just drop 8 and cover because he can take off with the football. So you either have to make decisions of applying pressure to us, spying him a little bit. But when you spy him, we've got some talented running backs, which I was the other night. I was so impressed with how well they played, and our line is it's a big offensive line that's very athletic. So all we got to do is get a hat for a hat sometimes, and we can get big gains. But he's also got receivers out there that can take the top off of any defense. So I'm really pleased with the way that we're performing what we're doing. But I know that our kids understand what we're trying to get accomplished, and the spacing that we're providing on the football field with him being able to hit those little alleys, it's hard to defend.
Obviously, you mentioned the offensive line now, but you also mentioned it following Thursday night's game. How was that room and how has that group come together to mold this great offensive line that you guys put on week 1?
So we played 10 guys the other night. I like to play a lot of linemen. This is a group, led by Deron Parks and Caleb Conrad, to name a 2 right off the bat, Noah and Duffy. is a senior. But Conrad was a first-team all-conference player, and we all know Mr. Parks and what he's had happen for him. We as a group, though, when they get up into the film room, there's no one talking, and they're focused and locked in on what they can do to get better. And as soon as we get out there to the practice field, they're actually doing exactly what we said. So that's a group that's really locked in. I'm excited about it because for the next 2 or 3 years, we're pretty set at that position.
Let's talk skill position, because you guys, again, a lot of talented guys in your running back position, your wide receiver position as well. What keeps you open-minded about those guys leading into weeks 2, 3, 4, and so on?
Well, first of all, you have to be able to spread the football around. It's a thing that I've always done. You have to be able to get the ball to your playmakers in space, and we've done that ever since I started calling plays back in 2008. It's critical to the offense's success, but the quarterback has to be on the same page as me. And I thought the other night he did a really good job of spreading the ball around and making sure that guys were getting the ball when it was necessary to make big plays. And those skill guys, they understand there's only one football going around. It's difficult to sit there and say I'm going to have 10 receptions a game, or it's difficult to say I'm going to have 15 carries a game, because you just never know. Some nights are different than others. So just knowing that right there, and our kids understanding how excited they got for other kids. I mean, if you looked late in the game the other day when, Noah Velatombi had a nice touchdown run, and the whole sideline was going crazy. And then late in the game, the very last touchdown run of the game, Landon Taylor ripped off one, and you can see the same thing happening. Our kids want the other kids on this football team to be successful. When you have stuff like that going on, that is a gelling mechanism that's going to make you get better as the year progresses.
Let's talk about Velatombi, because he was your quarterback last year. You guys have moved him around a lot in the game against Winfield. What have you seen from him that you're liking from the fact that he was a quarterback last year? Now he's kind of turning into a Swiss Army knife for you guys. What do you like about what he's been able to do since moving positions?
So he played safety, he played receiver, he played running back the other night. He carried the ball well. He had 2 touches running the ball, and then when he moved into quarterback, he ran the ball in for a touchdown. So he had 2 touchdowns on 3 carries. But then the thing that gets unnoticed that a lot of people don't see is in pass pro the other day, he's the one that broke the long 22-yard run for JacQai. And when you look back on film once again, he's holding his arms up because he knew he did his job to help us be successful on that play. He's a team player. Noah Velatombi is one of the most athletic kids on this football team. I told him, when we talked a little bit in the offseason, I kind of look at you as the way we used Mondrell. And, man, did he not show the other night that he's capable of doing that stuff.
Defensively, I would assume you would have to be happy at what you guys were able to do against a county rival in Winfield, holding them to 0 points. Defensively, what do you guys have to do whenever you guys get into the heat of your MSAC conference schedule?
Well, shutouts are hard to come by anytime. I don't care who you're playing. I mean, back in the day when Nitro was pretty bad, it was still hard to keep them out of the end zone. So I was real proud of our group. I thought our first defense played really well. I thought our second defense played really well. And then I thought our young guys, when they got out there, they did what they had to do and forced turnovers. So, shutouts are hard to come by, but we were proud of them in that aspect. But getting into the Mountain State Athletic Conference, it's going to be a little different animal. They're going to, teams are going to have more explosive areas that we're going to have to defend more of, and you're going to have more dynamic quarterbacks. Looking down the road, you can name who they are, but like I said, our focus is Capitol High right now.
A couple more for you, and let's talk about the outside noise, because obviously, as you're on social media. People want to sometimes point fingers, obviously,
Sure.
And sometimes people may not know what's going on. Some may, but how do you, as a coach, approach blocking out that outside noise? That way, you guys as a team collectively can move forward and do what you guys are able to do to be successful.
Well, I mean, right here, we're in the locker room, and the locker room is the only group of guys that matter. The outside noise does not matter, and people on the outside are either, some of them are jealous that they're not in our, not in this locker room. Some of them are just being disruptive and hating just because it's not their favorite team. We really don't care. Our focus is our football team. Our focus is rallying together and going out there to win football games. We want to do something that this school's never done. It's been on this in high school football playing terms for 99 football seasons. Next year's going to be the 100th year of Hurricane Redskin football. This is the 99th. We want to take this football team to heights it's never been before. In order to do that, you have to block out all the outside noise. You have to trust the guys in the locker room with you. You have to trust the coaches. Everybody's got the same goal in place here. If you start listening to people on the outside, that becomes a distraction. And when you're distracted, you cannot perform to your ability. Think about it as looking at your cell phone when you're driving down the road. You're not going to be on your A game, you know. So we want to make sure that the kids know that we're going to take care of them. We're going to get you guys to college. We're going to make sure that we're going to monitor your academic status here at the high school. We're going to get you in front of guys that you've never been in front of before to watch your talent level. And at the end of the day, we're going to go out here and win football games. And you're going to remember winning football games a heck of a lot more than what Joe Blow said outside of our program.
So then, along that line, then how do you approach that message to them? Because I would assume there's got to be something you say, but to get them fired up about just blocking that out. But is it something more of just where you have to tell them, hey, this is the time where everybody needs to collectively be together and not go out and do different things, correct?
Well, I mean, I don't really talk about what I say to the kids, to people, but we're in an unfortunate part of these kids have to deal with a lot of unfortunates. One being that everybody feels like they have a platform, whether on social media, like they're important, you know, and they feel like what they say is right. There's always two sides to every story. We don't get into that. We just don't touch it. Our focus is us. Our focus is what we're doing here is trying to make these kids better so when they get out. We've talked about little things like, you know, you guys got to make sure that your attitudes are straight. When you get out there on the field, you start getting mad over little calls and stuff like that. One of these days you're going to be out there and somebody that you don't want to be around, you say the wrong thing, you can get yourself in trouble. So we're trying to teach them life lessons. And when we can get these guys locked in, which I feel like we've done a really good job of doing that for the last 2 years, because you know, noise has been around forever. But when we get these guys locked in, they buy in, we have good success, and the kids ultimately can go do what they need to do outside of football. I mean, last year when we came here, we had 14 seniors, 12 of which got scholarship offers to go play college football. And out of those 14, 0 of them had a scholarship offer. So that's big to us. You know, Mondrell Dean came in as a transfer. You know, he had a couple scholarship offers, but he would be counted in your number too. So, but we had a lot of kids who didn't have anything, and now they do. And now you look down on social media for that part, and you've got 3 kids that played at Hurricane are going to be on the travel squad at a school as a freshman. That stuff's big. It's big. It's important to us, keeping those relationships alive. You know, I just talked to JacQai Long the other day, who played for me at South Charleston, and I had Mondrell on the same line. We're on a 3-way phone conversation, just, guys, how's it going? You know, and making sure that they understand that we care about them. I talked to Heath Montgomery. I shot him a message and just told him how proud I was of him and how successful I want him to be and stuff like that. And when I get a free moment, I like to do stuff like that. And it's whoever's on my mind at the time. But I always want to make sure that we have the right relationship. The relationship thing is the most important thing that we'll ever do in this game. The wins, the losses, none of that matters. We're all going to die one day. And how will you be remembered? And I want to be remembered with these guys that we cared about them, we loved them, and at the end of the day, we had a strong relationship.
Okay, well, so let's end on a good term. And obviously last year, another big social media trend was the Mays biscuit over at Susie's. So I got to ask, Friday, did you get a Mays biscuit?
So it's hard for me to get those, but Jack always takes care of me every once in a while. But I've kind of cut back a little bit in my eating. Yeah, and that's one of those things you got to get. When you have a biscuit that's bigger than this helmet, you got to kind of quit doing that. So I still love it, but I'm just kind of cutting back on that stuff on Sundays.
Touche. I like it. But Coach, thank you for your time. Thanks for the invitation, hospitality. But I appreciate it. Good luck in week 2 against Capital.
Oh, yeah. We'll be looking forward to seeing and hearing from you this year.
Absolutely. Head Coach Mays of the Hurricane Redskins here on the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook. And when we come back, we'll recap the show and we'll go over what goes on later on in the week as well. You won't want to miss it here on the Kanawha Valley Sports Notebook.
One take, we did it.
Hey, I knew you could do it. I mean, you're a guy for TV. I can see you.
Hi, this is JJ Roberts from Huntington, and when I'm back home, you will find me at my local Par-Mar store.
We had that thundering herd pride at your local Par-Mar stores. We are over 200 stores strong and growing. Download the Par-Mar app for even more savings and sign up for the Par-Mar rewards card. Whether it's food, gas, or groceries, we have you covered. We are Marshall and we are Par-Mar stores.
If there's not a Par-Mar store near you now, there will be soon.
In an ever-changing world, one thing you can always count on is Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Hurricane. You know, Gene and Ryan built their business the old-fashioned way by making friends. There are no gimmicks or games at Walker, just honest, fair deals, and their method is so straightforward it may shock you. Friendly service and a huge selection of inventory with more arriving daily. When you're ready for your next vehicle, take the short 20-minute drive from Charleston or Huntington to Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, just off the Hurricane exit of I-64. Walker Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, making friends one deal at a time.
Special thanks to Hurricane head coach Donnie Mays for joining me on today's show discussing a variety of topics. So special thanks to Coach Mays for his time as always. Coming up on Thursday, we'll have a new coach with a new perspective of week 2 coming up later in the week. And we'll also preview week 2 matchups on Thursday's show. Before I say goodbye though, as Coach Mays mentioned already, a guy by the name of Jack, he's talking about Jack Withrow, a dear friend of mine. Jack actually got me involved in this media industry, as you could say, especially in the broadcasting side of things, because my sophomore year of high school, I was playing junior varsity basketball for Winfield at the time, and we traveled to Point Pleasant, JV1. Varsity was about ready to tip off, but Jack needed a color analyst for the game. So the then head coach at the time, Brian England, and Jack came to me and they said, hey, would you want to do this? I said, absolutely. So from that point moving forward, I would do each of the varsity games after I would play my JV game, meaning I'd play, I would do the broadcast, and I'd leave. So it was a good deal all around. I definitely enjoyed doing that. I actually went on to do a few more games with Jack my junior year when I did not play basketball, but those were definitely fun times with Jack, a lot of great moments and a lot of great calls as well. So I do appreciate Jack for getting me involved in this industry as always, along with everybody else involved. But I always love telling that story about Jack and I because, again, Jack is a dear friend of mine and I respect him not only as a person but also as a media personality. So I do appreciate Jack for everything he's done. Again, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget about good old YouTube because we are now on YouTube. So please subscribe, tell a friend, help us grow this show. Who would you want to hear from? What personality within the Kanawha Valley would you want to hear from on this show? We will cover any sport, any topic. Hey, we got it right here on this show. So shoot me a DM at Taylor_Kennedy7 on Twitter, and you can find me there. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to hear from you. So again, thank you all for listening to the Tuesday edition of the Kanawha Valley Sports Report, and I will see you all on Thursday. Stay safe until then, and as always, subscribe and tell a friend.